Alright, welcome everybody. Today we're going to talk about the levels of production of collective meaning. That's a mouthful, but I think the topic is much more interesting than the title suggests. Let's look at it this way. How does culture emerge? Let's make a metaphysical assumption that there is some kind of logos on one side, and then on the other side there is society. And there needs to be a process through which the logos manifests in society. So this is very abstract. Let's make it a bit more concrete. So one critical observation that we must do is that the logos manifests itself in a private realm within our own heads, basically. It happens in the intimacy of an individual person, and then through speech and a whole range of processes it becomes part of a public narrative. So we really have to think about these distinctions between the public and the private. And we can think of it in terms of a metaphor, of a theater metaphor. So imagine that on one hand, what we have is the audience, and on the other hand, you have the backstage. And obviously what comes in between the two is the stage. And this is the process through which the intimate, private contact with whatever is the source of meaning becomes public knowledge, becomes public narrative, becomes culture. But now let's look at one of the most interesting aspects of this process, which is that it has or potentially can have various levels of complexity and intelligence. But let's start with the first level. The first level is I would call it the deep dive. This is something that one person does alone. So you sit down and you think about the topic, and then you come up with the answer and you share it with the world. More specifically, you first have to find a frame, which is a meaningful question, something that you find interesting. And then you dive down and explore the unknown. You expose yourself to something that you don't know and allow the unknown to kind of speak to you, and you start seeing patterns and synthesizing them. And then what happens next is really that you produce a synthesis of what you discovered out in the unknown. And then if this is to become part of the public consciousness, you have to perform it, which means you have to kind of tell a story, jump on stage and tell your story. And if proper meaning has to emerge, the deep dive has to be done with certain values. So number one is to drop the agenda. When you ask a question, you really ask the question. You don't start already knowing the answer. You really go down and you really authentically face the unknown. In other words, you have to be willing to face uncertainty. And then finally, if you want to present what you discover to the world, you have to embrace intellectual honesty, which basically is the practice of clearly distinguishing things that you know for a fact and things that you're just speculating about. People can speculate, they just have to clarify that they don't have proof for what they are saying. Now, this process of deep dives can have different durations. For example, one can spend 20 years thinking about the topic and writing a book, and obviously one can reach enormous depths with this process. An alternative is to be on stage and think on real time. This doesn't devalue what is happening. Obviously, the level of depth is going to be different. The kind of frequency and depth that I chose is to produce one video a day. So in one day one can do only so much, but over time my insight is going to grow, and you can kind of check in on the progress almost on a daily basis. Now, the deep dive as a concept is limited because it involves only one person. And one person has biases, blind spots, and his own narrow perspective. So we cannot rely only on that. So the question is, okay, what is the next level? What is level 2? And the answer is conversation. And by conversation, I don't mean debates. It's really something different, something that the intellectual dark web has been exploring, something that Sam Harris is explicitly going to try to do, experiments in conversation, where people are sitting one in front of the other and trying to have an honest conversation and engaging and face the unknown together. Here too we can see a certain process going on. So step number one again is to find a question that is meaningful to both people who are participating in the conversation. Step number 2 again is to explore the unknown together. And step number 3 again is to find a synthesis that includes both points of agreement and of disagreement. So we have kind of a new element here, which is that two people might agree and disagree on certain topics. And usually it is considered to be progress if the two interlocutors have been able to clarify better what they disagree on and what they agree on. And then finally, to conclude the analogy, there will be the performance part. I don't know, until now I've only seen the whole conversation as a performance, which has been very interesting to see online. You see a lot of conversations going on. It's also the format of the podcast and so on. I'm wondering whether there is space for something different, because this is basically the equivalent of thinking live on stage, and it's very engaging, but it also takes a lot of time. What is the analogous to spending 20 years writing a book when it comes to two people? What is the analogous of spending half an hour thinking and then preparing a little presentation like I'm doing right now, but when it comes to two people? So there is potential to explore these formats. And then we can ask ourselves, what is level 3? Level 3 obviously would include more people. And bear in mind that like a conversation among more than two people would not be level 3. It's still level 2, but kind of scaled. And I don't know how far you can scale it, because already with 3 people you see sometimes the interaction becomes awkward, or someone gets a bit more excluded, and the quality of the conversation decreases. There might be the possibility to scale this, but everyone involved must be extremely skillful and pay attention to the dynamic as a whole. I think Carl Rogers has tried to expand this idea of an open conversation to entire groups, but I don't know of anything else yet. So that might be one direction in which this scales. But since we are talking about level 3, it would have to be something that is on a higher level, that composes the power of individual conversations. And I don't know yet what that would look like. Maybe it's what one would call a workshop or a conference that kind of has a mix of these elements. I don't know. Maybe the people at Burning Man could tell us of some new forms of interaction that are even higher level. But anyway, what we can say is that level 3 would emerge from level 2. So at the very least, the people involved would have to be able to engage in very meaningful, very present conversations. And those would be the building blocks of the next level. So since I am personally only involved in level 1 activities, basically this channel, the question is, okay, why not start trying to do something at the next level? And so here I'm introducing another YouTube channel called the Level 2 Experiment. And the idea of this channel is not to have me as a guest all the time. I hope it will grow into something bigger than just me. And it's going to revolve around certain core values. And the core values are, it has to be about people who are willing to engage in an open conversation, in an honest conversation, not a debate, with each other, where they together pick a topic, and the topic has to be the most meaningful thing that they have the courage to talk about. It has to be interesting and meaningful to both people, and they have to be willing to, again, face the unknown and explore the topic together, and then draw a synthesis where they kind of synthesize what they agree on and what they don't agree on. So an attempt to generate meaning, 2 people at a time. And since it's one experiment, one question would be, isn't it stupid to make a channel that could be about anything? You know, like 2 people come on the channel and they could talk about anything. And I think this rule of picking the thing that is most meaningful to the people who are engaged has its own dynamic that will prevent the channel from derailing. And I think it has to do with how, if you will, the logos operates. This is something that I've seen in action in my coaching, which is I've started trusting the process itself of people flourishing. And I think that meaning has something like a spider spinning a web, where it looks chaotic. What meaning keeps focusing on, attention jumps and drops and goes around. And it looks chaotic, but over time, a pattern emerges. And as the pattern emerges, this is exactly what the focus will be on. The experiment could bring... So this is an intuition as to why the experiment could bring good fruit. And I like it because it basically puts the individual in the center. In a sense, it's an extension of what I'm trying to do here. If you have seen my video a couple of days ago, where I refocused this channel on basically what I'm interested in, on what is intrinsically meaningful to me right now, the question could be, is this channel going to be about anything? No, because I am interested in a subset of things. So the topic of the channel will emerge from what I am about and my growth. And the same could happen, hopefully, with this new channel. So if you are interested in this project of basically generating maximum meaning, if you will, and you're willing to have a conversation that will then be published, then let me know, and I'm happy to join you in conversation. Or if you want to talk about something with someone else, we can arrange that. So let me know. That's it for today. Thank you and goodbye.